Pitt football was handed its first loss of the season, dropping to 7-1 down in Dallas this past week against the SMU Mustangs, and it was a rout to say the least. Welcome into the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse. I'm Nathan Breisinger, joined alongside by Karl Ludwig, the two Pitt football beat writers over at PittsburghSportsNow.com. Be talking a lot about this SMU game, what went wrong, what needs to be done, especially offensively to fix things. Talk about the 18th ranked Pitt Panthers in the college football playoff pool, the initial CFP pool, and then, of course, talking about the upcoming Virginia matchup, 8 o'clock at Acrisure Stadium on Saturday. So got a lot to talk about, but have to talk about this SMU game. We waited a few days. We let it all digest. We've heard from the players, the coaches, the whole roundabout here this week and seen their practice a little bit. But Karl, I mean, this was just a brutal loss. Pitt really not showing up, fell flat from the beginning. I mean, the Rashad Battle missed tackle on the first third down of the game kind of set the tone of what that game would be. And from there, it was just a rout. SMU just ran away with it and a big win. Karl, I mean, what were your just initial thoughts as you're watching this game unfold?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned it pretty well already. I mean, I think they didn't show up. I think it was unprepared. They were flat coming out of the game. I mean, you mentioned that the Rashad Battle tackle, which he was not benched, according to Archie Collins. He was a little banged up. They brought in some more guys. Didn't really change anything though, but pitches didn't show up, and it was pretty clear from the beginning that this wasn't a game that they were really all that into. Offensively, the O line couldn't stop a four-man rush, a three-man rush at all. I mean, SMU dropped 8 in coverage, forced Eli to step up and make his throws. And when the O line gets beaten by 3 or 4 men, um, it, it's kind of impossible to have anything going offensively. There's no push in the run game. The receivers for the first time this year were kind of lackadaisical. There were some drops, some missed routes there, and it wasn't any better on defense. The Sharks were chased down and rounded up, and missed tackles were a very prevalent theme with a very fast, very explosive SMU offense. And even special teams, where one of the best units in the country was kind of like flat. I think the whole team was just flat. I mean, you got Ben Sauls missing field goals, just one to be fair, a 40-yarder, but Caleb Junko, I think he averaged 25 yards net in that game. It was a night where if something could go wrong for Pitt, it did, and it did in a major way. And a 48-25 result is much closer on paper than it actually was watching that game.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of terms you can put out for that, an embarrassment of sorts. And, I don't know if you mentioned it there, but the fake punt attempt to start the second half was botched from the beginning. I mean, just as soon as Junko saw that coverage, he probably should have just booted it and gotten it away, but he didn't. And this Pitt team, this was one of the worst deficits heading into halftime under Pat Narduzzi, down 28 points at half, 31-3. Last time that happened was in 2020 against Clemson. They were down 38-10 at half. It's happened a couple other times, but other than that, the biggest deficit was 35 points against Oklahoma State back in 2017. I mean, a game that no one wants to remember. That one was brutal for Pitt. Max Brown was in there. Then it was Danucci. I mean, it was just a bad game all around back years ago. But let's talk a little bit more about the defense. I mean, we saw the missed tackles from Lynham and Battle, and Crumpley was in there at corner a lot because Battle was out, and he got beat a handful of times. Then Brashard Smith just running all over the place. And Pitt's a team defensively. Pat Narduzzi mentions it all the time, limiting explosive plays. He says that they win 70% of their games when there's 4 or less explosives from the other team. Well, you can define explosives. There's multiple ways. A lot of people see it as 15 plus yards, 20 plus yards. Well, Pitt allowed 8 plays of 15 plus yards. 6 of those were of 20 plus yards, and 2 of them came on touchdowns. A 71-yard rush from Brashard Smith, and also the 80-yard pass to Matthew Hibner. I mean, this defense just really couldn't stop much at all in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great job coaching by SMU and the whole staff there. They had a great game plan, and they knew what the goal was going into the game, what they wanted to do against Pitt, and they did it almost perfectly. I think Pitt didn't have a terrible game plan. I think Randy Bates had a decent plan to try to contain Kevin Jennings and that explosive offense. But when plays were there to be made, Pitt did not execute, and I think that was mentioned by a few players this week in practice after practice. But there were chances where they could get off the field with a tackle or a third and long, and whether it was a missed tackle or a missed assignment or just a blown coverage, SMU just stayed on the field. They finished their drives and they racked up explosive plays, and it was pretty uncharacteristic of a defense that over the last 2 weeks had looked super sharp, super locked in, um, flying all over the field. So I think it's more of a one game blip on the radar kind of deal. Like it was a bump on the road, a really bad performance, but I think it's something that Pitt can look back on the tape and realize that, hey guys, like we didn't play well. We had a lot of explosive plays against us, but we were there to make those plays. We just couldn't do it, and it's no solid. There's no solace in that looking back at the game now, but I think it's a huge learning opportunity for the defense now, kind of like it was against Western Michigan in 21. Even the team, players only meeting it after that one, players only meeting after this one. You know what to do. You know how to lock in. You have the players to do so. You've proven it this season already. It's now about kind of just making sure those adjustments happen against Virginia and then Clemson and then Louisville and then Boston College. And if you can do that, I think the defense will be fine. But it was definitely an eye-opening result, an eye-opening kind of watch on the field. It was just it's one of those tapes where you watch it once and you burn it and you move on to the next game.
Pitt was, or SMU was 7 of 14 on third down attempts, 50% there. Pitt 5 of 16, and that's become a little bit of a struggling department in the offense. But you talk about maybe this game was a little bit of just a blip, of bad play, but this offense has sort of struggled or at least slowed down over the past couple of games. And when Eli Holstein is on the field in the last three games, they're only scoring 12.7 points per game. So things have really slowed down for this Pitt offense. However, they still rank 10th nationally in points per game with 38.9 points per game, but a lot of that came obviously in the non-conference play and against North Carolina to open things. But the offense is really slowing down, and you look at the numbers from this game. Holstein was 29 for 47, which completion percentage not terrible, but an interception, only threw for 248 yards, was sacked three times. Now, the rush game only just over 100 yards in this one. Des Reed, 49 net yards for him. Rodney Hammond, 4 touches for 17 total yards. How does this offense, how do you fix this offense, from where, I mean, it was once a humming offense that was scoring a ton of points. Now teams are starting to adjust. We've heard from Narduzzi that these teams are, as you said, Carl, dropping a lot of 8 coverage looks or only rushing 4 guys. What's the way to adapt and solve that?
Well, I mean, it's not an easy fix right now. I think, like you mentioned, the blip on the radar is for the defense. I'd say the offense is definitely a concern at this point. Um, Eli Holstein has been a little rattled at times. He's looked a little slow um, on the field. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman in the past 3 games. That's what he looked like. So I think it's on Cade Bell to really kind of settle him down, to give him chances to make the easy throws, to give him the routes underneath that can open up the run game, open up deeper shots. Because against SMU, it was all underneath. I think he had 2 attempts over 20 yards, both incomplete. I think 35 of his passes were within 10 yards of the first down or behind the line of scrimmage. So he may have had some completions, but it wasn't going anywhere. It didn't open anything up, and when there's no run game, when there's no threat of moving the ball on the ground, it's going to allow teams to drop back and force Eli to read the defense post snap, find the reads that may not open up immediately, and he's struggled to do so far. He's young; he'll learn with more looks against these kind of coverages. I think Narduzzi mentioned this week that Pitt is showing him more looks in practice to kind of prepare him for what he might see against UVA and teams going forward. But um, there is no easy fix. I mean, you'd love to get the run game going. You'd love to get more creativity in getting the ball to the running backs. I mean, uh, Desmond Reed's a fantastic player, but giving him the ball on a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 up the middle isn't going to do anything for you. I mean, um, I think you kind of have to get the other guys involved. You have to kind of maybe have more extra man on the line looks, kind of have more protection for Eli against the rush, kind of open up lanes in the ground. I mean, I think it's time for Cade Bell to kind of earn his money here and earn his reputation. Where, yeah, you had some great offenses in the first few weeks of the season. You had some great games, but it's you're 7-1, you're 18th in the playoff, as we'll discuss. It's time to get creative, time to open up the playbook and figure out ways to win games on the ground and in the air. I mean, he's done so in the past. He can get those guys open. It's about kind of showing Eli those open guys and having him make those throws. Um, so it won't be easy, but I think there are ways to do so. It just you have to do it on the field, and it starts in practice with all the preparation they've been doing.
And as you mentioned, this game very reminiscent to what we saw in 21 with Western Michigan and Miami, you could say, and the way Pitt learned from that game. I mean, a lot of people have talked about it. Um, but this team, I mean, seems to be taking it in stride. I mean, Narduzzi mentioned that this is a hurt team and they're learning from everything from it. And the one quote I liked immediately following the game from Brandon George was he said, God has a funny way of humbling everybody. And I just, thought that was very interesting. George is a leader on this team at linebacker. And I really think the leadership on this team is really what's going to push this team back into the win column. And we'll see that here against a Virginia team coming Saturday that they have a big opportunity to do that against. But before that, AP voters not super fond of Pitt's play, dropped them to 23. But the college football playoffs, the first initial ranking came out this week, and Pitt 18th in the ranking. So that loss didn't really hurt them. The committee saying that they really liked their start 7-0. They like the Narduzzi team that has been built. Eli Holstein, the quarterback that they have for Pitt, and the SMU loss. It's a rather it's a quality team that they lost to, who now ranks 13th in the CFP. And taking a look at the other ACC teams that are in the poll, Clemson at 23. They'll see them in 2 weeks. Louisville at 22. They'll see them in 3 weeks. And then Miami at 4 atop the ACC as well right now. So, Carl, I mean, were you surprised at 18, Pitt sliding in there?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I thought more in the 20s range, around 22, 23, like the AP poll, but I think it's a great ranking. I think Pitt has earned the ranking. I think pretty obviously the committee respects the ACC way more than the voters do. And the AP and the coaches poll. Uh, Miami right now has a bye. SMU is just on the outside looking in right now with a chance to get in there themselves. And you got Clemson and Louisville who are both kind of lingering back there with 2 and 3 losses, but they're two quality opponents who Pitt will have a chance to impress against this season. So 18 puts Pitt in position to make a run here. I think the loss to SMU hurt more in the ACC title race than it did in the playoff race. I think Pitt still controls what it can do in the playoff race. You go 4-0. We have two more ranked wins. You're 11-1. You might not make the ACC championship game, but you're still 11-1. By that point, the offense and defense will be clicking if you beat those four teams, including two ranked teams. So uh, I know the goal is an ACC championship, but Pitt might have to kind of pivot that to making an impact in the college football playoff, which they can definitely control right now with 4 wins, and it won't be easy. Um, Probably can't afford a loss to really want to be in that chase, but it's all right in front of them. If they want to get this done, that's right there in front of them. So um, it's on the coaches to kind of lock that team in, to make the adjustments needed to get the guys ready to go again. And I think it'll be fun to watch. I think it starts this weekend against UVA. I think Pitt will make a statement this weekend. Um, Bounce back and kind of show that this team isn't out of the running yet.
And you can speculate all you want about those, especially those two ranked games upcoming in a couple of weeks and talk CFP all you want. But it does start with this Virginia game, a team that is 4-4, 1-3 in ACC play. And that win came in the second week against Wake Forest, 31-10 or 31-30. So a 1 point win. Um, this is a matchup in which Pitt has gone 7-2 since joining the ACC, and most recently in 2022 had that big win down in Charlottesville, winning 37-7, the game in which they started it off with a bang with back-to-back pick sixes. Um, just an unbelievable defensive performance again down there in Virginia. Now, this is a team in the Cavaliers that is coming off of a bye week. And before that, they lost big to North Carolina, 41-14. This was just a really bad game for the Cavaliers on their part. So two teams sort of coming off of bad losses. And their quarterback, Anthony Calandria, a guy that can scramble, that can run, but he went 16 for 28 passing for 156 yards, threw two interceptions in that game versus the Tar Heels, and was sacked 9 times. He was sacked 9 times. And Pitt is a team that usually averages about 3 sacks per game, which is up there towards the top in the country. I mean, he's 11th in the country. So Pitt has an interesting challenge with Calandra being a little bit of a dual threat guy, but it's a big opportunity for Pitt to play really well defensively and get its offense going again.
Absolutely. I believe UVA began the season like 4-1. Kind of maybe had some
Yep.
teams. I'm like, oh, is this a different UVA team? But this is a team that Pitt should blow out of the water. I think UNC gave you the game plan. Calandria is a talented quarterback. He's a true gunslinger. He will throw the ball as many times as you allow him. He'll take off and run, but he's not a guy who's gonna really make you stress when it comes to making those high precision throws. I mean, he's a volume kind of over anything else kind of guy. So I think Pitt has a chance to really rack up those sack numbers like they did against Cal. I think it's really a get right game. Get the assignments and the alignments all locked in. Kind of finish those tackles. Make sure you hit Calandria a whole bunch. Rattle him a little bit. I'm not saying 5 interceptions, but you can get 2 or 3. You can force a couple turnovers here, and um, a UNC offense that isn't the greatest. It's not a bad offense with Jacoby Criswell, as we've seen against Pitt this season, but this is a game where Eli Holstein and Desmond Reed and Rodney Hammond they should be excited for a chance to really kind of come out here and show that last week doesn't define them. This team is a whole lot better than it's played like the last 3 weeks, and um, I think Pitt knows now what teams want to do against them on defense. They know what works, what doesn't work, and I think we'll see a new look Pitt offense this week. It's kind of spent the last week preparing for what they've seen over the last 3 weeks, and I believe Pat Narduzzi mentioned that they have 2 game plans potentially for UVA. So this team is ultra prepared. They've been practicing hard all week. They're hungry. They were hurt and upset after that loss to SMU, and I think this is a chance to really kind of use UVA as a launch pad toward the last 3 games of the season and really make a statement with a nice win here.
And the big key is limiting Calandria, but also his number one target receiving, Malachi Fields, 43 receptions, 654 yards on the season, and 4 touchdowns. But North Carolina on the ground was able to limit the Cavaliers to 7 total yards. Kobe Pace is the guy who leads the Cavaliers in rushing. And he's a guy that was a Clemson transfer, so he's been around the conference. Xavier Brown also second in rushing for the Cavaliers as well. Now, defensively, this is one of the softer defenses that Pitt will see all season long. Defense allows 408.8 yards per game, which is 15th in the ACC. Their pass defense is 16th in the ACC, allowing 275 yards per game. So this is the game that, you had the loss, and this is the perfect rebound game for Pitt to have where you can get everything back on track for the Panthers. Now, Pitt is favored by 7.5 points, home field advantage, 8 o'clock kick at Acrisure Stadium. Carl, what is your prediction coming into this one?
Um, I'm gonna say I would say, I mean, I know it's a night game and fans aren't too happy about that. I can't say I'm too happy about that myself, but I think we'll see a nice crowd there. I think we'll see Pitt Panther Nation back in full force, and I think we're gonna see like a 41-13 win here. I think Pitt rights the ship. I think Eli Holstein has a few touchdowns. I think he uses his legs more. I think they'll unlock the ground game a bit more using his legs and open up chances for Des Reed and for for Rodney Hammond and Daniel Carter. But I think 41-13, Pitt comes out, wins comfortably, heads into Clemson next week with a huge win and ready to show teams that, hey, this Pitt Panthers are back and they're serious about making a college football playoff push.
This was a game at the beginning of the year for me that I circled and was saying, this is your game in conference where you have a chance to really blow a team out of the water. And I think this is the opportunity, and it comes at again, perfect time. This team's going to be PO'd. I mean, they're going to be ready to go. They should have a fire under them coming in this one. I have Pitt 38-10. I just don't think Virginia's offense is that great. Now, obviously, you got to be careful. We saw what SMU was able to do and torch Pitt. So the defense has to step up immensely here. And then the offense just has to find ways to get it going again between Eli Holstein throwing the ball and taking a couple shots downfield. And again, SMU dropped eight coverage. There really wasn't a lot of guys opening, rewatching that game. Not a ton of guys opening on the receiving route. But he has to take maybe a couple chances downfield, allow the run game to open up a little bit as well. So a balanced offensive approach is going to be, essential in this win for Pitt. Any final thoughts, Carl, heading into this one?
I'm kind of feeling like I was like after before the Syracuse game, where it's just this stuff. This is Pitt wants to go 1-0 every week. This is a chance to really truly go 1-0 and to set the season off on a strong finish here. So I think just handle your business and everything will work itself out for Pitt.
All right. Pitt, Virginia, coming up on Saturday, 8 o'clock, ACC Network at Acrisure Stadium. Be sure to follow along over at PittsburghSportsNow.com for all of the Pitt football coverage you can get. For Karl Ludwig, I'm Nathan Breisinger. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse.